In the world of organized crime, few names stir more fear and fascination than Anthony Gaspipe Casso, a ruthless enforcer turned underboss of the Lucchese crime family. Casso left a trail of terror that echoed through the streets of New York. Feared by his enemies, but also by his own men, Casso's reign was defined by paranoia, violence, and relentless quest for power. They called him Gaspipe, a name he despised, but a symbol of his brutal reputation. Casso's story is one of loyalty turned to betrayal, power drowned in paranoia, and legacy marred by violence. But who was Anthony Casso really? Was he just another enforcer driven by greed, or was there a darker, more complex mind behind his merciless deeds? Join us as we dive into the life of one of the Mafia's most infamous figures, a man whose quest for control consumed him and ultimately led him to his downfall. This is James Proctor with Real Mob Stories, and without further delay, on to our feature presentation. In today's show, we're going to take a different approach on the life of Anthony Salvatore Casso, a.k.a. Gaspipe. We know that he was a notorious underboss of the New York's Lucchese crime family and one of the most feared figures in Cosa Nostra. Renowned among mobsters as a homicidal maniac, Casso's been credibly linked to dozens of murders and personally confessed to involvement in 36 murders. But who is Gaspipe? How did he rise from the streets of South Brooklyn to the top of the Lucchese family along with boss Vic Musso? He was a short, stocky man of 5'6" with an explosive temper, but his volatile personality and leadership style destroyed the Lucchese family, and in my opinion, it hasn't recovered. I'm interested in knowing more about who this psychopath was. Going back to the beginning, Anthony Casso was born on May 21, 1942 in South Brooklyn, New York, the youngest of 3 children in a family of Italian immigrants. His father, Michael Casso, was a low-level Genovese family soldier who worked on the Brooklyn docks. In fact, Casso's godfather was Little Sally Calambrano, a Genovese capital regime who controlled the docks, foreshadowing young Anthony's early exposure to the underworld. Not surprising, Casso dropped out of school at age 16 to labor with his father as a longshoreman. His interests skewed towards crime and violence as a teenager when he ran with the South Brooklyn Boys Gang, engaging in street fights with rival Irish youth gangs. Gaspipe was known as a good shot with a pistol, and he would practice by shooting at rooftop targets and even earn pocket money hunting hawks for local pigeon keepers. During these years, Casso acquired the nickname Gaspipe. According to Casso, it derived from his father's favorite tactic of threatening union dissenters with a gas pipe. Anthony hated the nickname, and very few dared use it to his face. Only close friends would call him Gas. Casso's penchant for violence and earning soon caught the attention of Christopher "Christy Tick" Finari, a powerful Lucchese family capital regime who ran the Brooklyn crew based out of the 19th Hole Social Club. Finari took the young thug under his wing around 1959, employing Casso as a loan shark collector and enforcer for gambling and drug operations. Under Christy Tick's tutelage, Casso made his bones by the early 1970s, reportedly by killing a drug dealer suspected of being a police informant. In the fall of 1976, Christy Tick Finari proposed Casso for membership into the Lucchese family, and he was soon inducted at the age of 34 in a ceremony presided by Lucchese boss Anthony "Tony Ducks" Corallo. Casso soon partnered with another rising Lucchese soldier, Vic Musso, and the two would form a tight criminal alliance that endured for years. Together, Casso and Musso committed a host of crimes, from drug trafficking and burglary to brazen contract killings, establishing themselves as an effective and deadly duo. By the late 70s and early 1980s, Gaspipe Casso had become a key member of Christy Tick's crew and one of the family's top earners and hitmen. He was involved in lucrative burglaries. Casso later bragged that he's one of the best safecrackers in the business. Law enforcement would later learn that Casso had a hand in some infamous underworld murders during this era. A pivotal moment came in December of 1985 when Gambino family captain John Gotti and allies were planning the unsanctioned assassination of their boss Paul Castellano. According to later accounts, Casso was approached by Gotti's crew for support in the conspiracy. Casso said that the Lucchese family would support the unsanctioned hit, But in reality, the Lucchese and Genovese bosses, Anthony Tony Ducks Corallo and Vincent Chin Gigante, were outraged when Castellano was taken out, and they ordered retaliation for the Castellano hit. They tapped Vic Amuso and Gaspipe Casso to eliminate Gotti and his co-conspirators. Unconventionally, Gigante insisted on using a bomb, a method normally forbidden in New York due to the risk of civilian collateral damage, hoping to misdirect blame toward Sicilian mafiosi known for bombings. Genovese associate Herbert Pate, who had experience with explosives, was tasked in creating the device. The Genovese and Lucchese families found an inside Gambino ally with James Jimmy Brown Failla, who was a Capo Regime and former driver for Carlo Gambino. The plan was for Jimmy Brown to run the Gambino family, with Tommy Gambino and Danny Marino being the other administration members, once Gotti and Frank DeCicco were taken out. On April 13, 1986, we know that Casso met with Jimmy Brown and was told that John Gotti and underboss Frank DeCicco would be showing up for a meeting at his Veterans and Friends social club. Later that afternoon, Casso and Amuso oversaw the killing of Gambino underboss Frank DeCicco through the remote-controlled explosive placed under Frank DeCicco's car. The bomb detonated, killing DeCicco, but John Gotti was nowhere to be found as he canceled his appearance at the last minute. This lethal attack, one of the few car bombings in modern New York City Mafia history, demonstrated Casso's cunning and his eagerness to please his superiors with sheer violence. Later that year, in September 1986, Casso survived an assassination attempt by Gambino associates. Casso was in his Lincoln Continental in front of a Carvel's ice cream store in Brooklyn when three gunmen pulled alongside Casso and started firing pistols and a shotgun. Casso was hit in the back and left arm but survived. At the same time, there was upheaval across the five families due to the Mafia commission case. In 1986, Lucchese boss Tony Ducks Corallo was convicted and facing life in prison. Corallo sought to ensure an orderly succession. He called Vic Amuso and Anthony Casso to a meeting and reportedly offered the top spot to Casso, who deferred in favor of his friend Vic. In 1987, Vic Amuso became the new boss and Anthony Casso was elevated to consigliere, filling the seat vacated by Christy Tick's imprisonment. Not long after, the Lucchese acting boss designate, Anthony Buddy Luongo, vanished. He is believed to have been murdered in late 1986, likely by Amuso and Casso, clearing away a rival for power. In 1989, Casso formally moved up to underboss after the previous underboss retired. Now, the two Brooklyn-raised partners, Amuso and Casso, firmly controlled the family. As underboss, Anthony Casso was effectively co-leader of the Lucchese family alongside Vic Amuso. The pair presided over one of the family's most profitable and most violent eras. Casso was regarded as Amuso's trusted right hand and had a direct hand in both the family's business expansion and its deadly internal affairs. Under Amuso and Casso's regime, the Lucchese family reaped enormous illicit profits across several rackets. Casso in particular was an adept earner who exploited any opportunity. By the late 1980s, the duo was grossing many millions of dollars annually. For example, they extorted $15,000 to $20,000 per month from Long Island trucking and carting companies and collected about $75,000 a month in kickbacks from air freight cargo firms in exchange for labor peace. They also secretly owned or controlled gambling operations, rigged video, poker, and slot machines placed in bars and shops, netting about $20,000 per week for the family. A Lucchese-linked concrete supplier firm brought in $245,000 a year that went straight into their coffers. They shook down the garment district businesses for over $200,000 a year in protection fees. And as bosses, Amuso and Casso naturally took a cut of every earning racket run by their crews. Law enforcement later tallied that the two men were personally taking in an estimated $1 million plus a year from family operations, an economic dominance rarely seen since the golden era of organized crime. Casso was willing to make alliances beyond the family to boost profits. In one instance, he and Amuso accepted an $800,000 payment from the Colombo family in return for Casso's assistance, helping them steal steel beams from a Manhattan construction site, essentially a black market operation. In another deal, they received $600,000 from the Gambino family for allowing the Gambinos to take over a Lucchese connected construction contractor on a Coney Island housing project. Casso also extended the Lucchese's reach into Queens by backing a Greek-American crime boss, George Kalikatis. In 1990 alone, Casso charged Kalikatis a tribute of $683,000 for the privilege of running his loan shark and extortion and gambling rackets under Lucchese protection. These examples illustrate Casso's cunning entrepreneurism. He viewed every enterprise, even outside his traditional turf, as an opportunity for profit, so as long as he could enforce his share. Perhaps Casso's most cunning move was the recruitment of 2 NYPD detectives into his service. Beginning in the mid-1980s, Casso had NYPD detectives Louis Ippolito and Stephen Caracappa on his payroll, feeding him inside information and even committing murders for him. Gaspipe refers to these 2 corrupt cops as my crystal ball because they supplied advanced warning of law enforcement probes and the identities of informants. For about $4,000 per month in bribes, supplemented by hefty bonuses for side jobs, Ippolito and Caracappa funneled Casso confidential police and FBI intelligence from 1986 up to 1992. This included tipping him off in May of 1990 that federal indictments from the Windows case were about to drop, allowing Casso and Musso to evade an initial FBI dragnet and go into hiding. The Mafia cops also brazenly carried out or facilitated at least 8 murders at Casso's behest. One particularly chilling example was the June 1990 murder of Lucchese soldier Bruno Vacciolo, whom Casso suspected wrongly of turning informant. Caracappa provided Casso with sensitive files suggesting Vacciolo was talking. Vacciolo was then lured to a garage and murdered in an especially gruesome fashion. He was stabbed repeatedly, shot through both eyes, then finished off with a bullet to the head, after which his killer shoved a dead canary in his mouth as a final message. Snitches get stitches. The canary in the mouth shocked even veteran mob watchers for its morbid symbolism. It later emerged that Lil Al Diarco, then a trusted Lucchese capo, oversaw the hit to impress Casso. In another case, the Mafia cops helped Casso locate and kill a fugitive Lucchese soldier named Anthony DiLappi, who had fled to California. Posing as organized crime investigators, Ippolito and Caracappa contacted the LAPD and obtained DiLappi's Los Angeles address, which they passed to Casso. Casso's hit team flew out and shot DiLappi to death in an apartment garage in 1990. Casso also tasked the cops to directly assassinate a Gambino captain, Edward Eddie Lino, who he believed had been part of the Castellano hit squad. In November of 1990, Ippolito and Caracappa pulled Lino's car over on a Brooklyn highway and executed him, a contract killing for which Casso paid them $75,000. Through these corrupted detectives, Casso had effectively infiltrated the NYPD, a remarkable display of cunning and reach. He gained a steady stream of tips on surveillance and informants. Indeed, Ippolito and Caracappa leaked the identities of multiple cooperating witnesses, enabling Casso to order those men killed or attacked before they could testify. For instance, they identified members of a burglary crew suspected of informant. Casso had one, Otto Heidel, murdered, and another shot, Dominic Costa, who survived. The Mafia cops' betrayal of their badges was later described by federal prosecutors as stinging and evil personified. It stands as one of the worst cases of police corruption in U.S. history, and it was orchestrated by Gaspipe Casso's machinations. Casso also extended his influence via alliances with other Mafia factions. He maintained a close working relationship with Genevieve's boss Vincent Gigante, as seen in their joint effort to kill Gotti. Casso's reach even crossed ethnic lines. He partnered with Russian mob boss Murat Balagala in their multi-million-dollar gasoline tax scam thriving in the 1980s. When Balagala came under threat from a violent rival, Vladimir Resnikov, in 1986, it was Casso who stepped in to take care of it. After Resnikov's brazenly machine-gunned Balagala's office and held a gun to his head demanding $600,000, Balagala turned to Casso for protection. Infuriated at what he saw as Resnikov's insult to all of Italian organized crime, Casso got approval from his superiors to retaliate. He arranged for 2 hitmen, Joseph Testa and Anthony Center of the former Brooklyn DeMeo crew to ambush Reznikov, who was duly shot dead in a Brighton Beach parking lot in June of 1986. After that, Balagula didn't have any problems with other Russians. Casso quipped by sharing profits from Balagula's operation, Cosa Nostra turned the gasoline racket into the biggest money maker after narcotics in that era, vastly enriching the family in the process. While Gaspipe Casso was an adept businessman for the mob, he was equally, if not more, notorious for his boundless violence. By the late 1980s, Casso exhibited extreme paranoia about potential informants and traitors. His leadership style could be described as terroristic. He used intimidation and murder as tools of administration, and this created a climate of fear that proved counterproductive, as many Lucchese members either went into hiding or defected to the government rather than face Casso's wrath. One infamous example of Casso and Amuso's paranoia was the so-called Whack Jersey Order. The Lucchese family had a New Jersey branch led by Capo Anthony Assatoro, the Jersey crew. In 1988, after Assatoro refused to pay an increase in tribute, Amuso and Casso decided to make an example of the entire crew. They allegedly ordered the murder of every member of the Jersey faction. Lucchese hit teams were dispatched to hunt down Assatoro and his men. Although this dragnet ultimately failed to kill Assatoro because he went on the run and later surrendered, it epitomized the extreme measures Casso was willing to take against his own family members over suspected disloyalty. Assatoro never forgot Casso's bloodthirst. All he wanted to do is kill, get what you can, even if you didn't earn it, Assatoro later said bitterly of Gaspipe. The Jersey crew ordeal backfired on Casso. Several Jersey crew members, once targeted, flipped and became witnesses against the Lucchese leadership, including Assatoro himself and his top aide turned informant, Peter Chiodo. As the government's pressure mounted by 1990, Casso grew even more suspicious of men within his ranks. He and Amuso began secretly eliminating anyone they feared might cooperate or defy them. Violating Mafia tradition, they even targeted family members of potential informants, an act many mobsters considered beyond the pale. In one case, Casso ordered a hit on his longtime friend and loyal capo, Peter Fat Pete Chiodo, after Chiodo was indicted in the Windows case in 1991. Hitmen ambushed Chiodo in his car, pumping 12 bullets into his massive body, but miraculously, Chiodo survived. His obesity actually helped him survive the hit. When Chiodo subsequently broke Mafia oath and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, a livid Casso sought revenge by targeting Chiodo's innocent family. In March 1992, gunmen shot Chiodo's sister Patricia in the neck and back while she drove in Brooklyn. She fortunately survived, and in that May, Casso's allies murdered Chiodo's uncle, whose corpse was found stuffed in a car trunk. This unprecedented campaign of terror against relatives was meant to send a message, but in reality it only underscored Casso's deadly paranoia and further alienated his men. Samuel the Bull Gravano, the Gambino underboss who had himself turned informant, later admitted he refused to testify against Casso out of fear that Gaspipe would retaliate by killing Sammy's family on the outside. Such was Casso's vicious reputation. Inside the family, Casso's purge continued. Several veteran Lucchese mobsters were killed at Casso's behest between 1989 and 1991 on mere suspicion of disloyalty. Besides Bruno Facciolo and Dilapi, mentioned earlier, another Lucchese soldier, Dominic Dom Costa, was repeatedly shot, though survived for being suspected of talking to authorities. Even the family's acting boss, Lil Al Diarco, felt the chill. In September 1991, Diarco sensed that Amuso, by then jailed and Casso still at large, doubted his loyalty and might move to have him whacked over a minor perceived slight. Diarco preemptively defected, walking to the FBI, and becoming the first sitting New York boss to turn informant. He later testified that serving Amuso and Casso had become untenable. Whenever they needed to do something unpleasant to someone, I was the prick chosen by them. Diarco explained how he was tasked with grisly jobs like the Facciolo Canary murder. The final straw came when Diarco believed Casso marked him for death at a meeting, so Diarco chose to betray the bosses before they could betray him. By 1991-92, the Lucchese family was imploding under Casso and Amuso's reign of terror. Their paranoia and heavy-handed administration actually decimated the family's strength. Over 60 Lucchese wise guys, which was roughly half the family's membership, were either imprisoned, murdered, or defecting by the early 1990s. This is a stunning attrition directly attributable to Vic and Gaspipe's leadership. As one Mafia writer summarized, within 5 years of taking over a thriving Borgata, the Lucchese family was in ruins. Casso's management by fear had backfired considerably. In 1990, as federal indictments closed in, Amuso and Casso decided to flee rather than face trial. Tipped off by their informants and law enforcement, the Mafia cops, that they were about to be charged in the big Windows case racketeering indictment of May of 1990, the two went on the lam in the summer of 1990, and this began Gaspipe Casso's life as a fugitive, which was a period marked by constant movement, clandestine communications, and continued violence from the shadows. Amuso and Casso initially hid together but eventually separated to reduce the chance of joint capture. In July 1991, Vic Amuso was called in Pennsylvania after an anonymous tip led the FBI to Scranton. Agents nabbed Amuso at a mall payphone. Some in law enforcement suspected Casso himself had betrayed Amuso's location, as Amuso's safe house was never found, and the tipster seemed to know exactly when and where Amuso would be, fueling Amuso's later belief that Casso had sold him out. Casso remained at large, becoming de facto acting boss in hiding. He grew a mustache, changed safe houses frequently, and used an elaborate network of public payphones and coded messages to direct his loyalists on the streets. Throughout 1991 and 1992, Casso orchestrated murders from the shadows, including the failed hit on Fat Pete Chiodo and the shooting of Chiodo's sister, to punish turncoats and maintain control. He even allegedly ordered a plot to kill the federal judge handling his case, Eugene Nickerson, although this was never carried out. Casso's freedom ran out in early 1993. Investigators finally got a break by tracking one of Casso's remaining henchmen, Big Frank Lastorino, via his cellular phone calls. Using new technology and a wiretap on Lastorino's phone, authorities pinpointed a cluster of calls near Mount Olive, New Jersey. On January 19, 1993, FBI agents and U.S. Marshals descended on a house in Mount Olive, the residence of Casso's mistress, Rosemarie Bellotti, and caught Gaspipe Casso literally coming out of the shower. After 30 months as the nation's most wanted mobster, Anthony Casso was in custody, arrested wet and towel-clad in his lover's bathroom. The search of Casso's hideout yielded a trove of evidence. Agents found a rifle, $340,000 in cash stashed away, and intriguingly detailed records Casso kept of the Lucchese family. Among the documents were ledgers of monthly kick-ups from the crews, lists of the Christmas tribute payments he and Amuso received from each capo, and even a typed list of proposed new members, disguised as wedding guests. This penchant for paperwork was unusual for a mobster and indicated Casso's hands-on managerial style. He tracked the family's finances meticulously like a criminal CEO. Of course, in doing so, he created incriminating evidence. Also found were internal FBI reports that had been turned over to Amuso's lawyer in discovery, which Casso apparently obtained, a hint of the leaked law enforcement info he was privy. Facing a mountain of charges, including racketeering, multiple murder conspiracies, extortion, and more, and betrayed by his former partner Amuso, who from prison had now formally ostracized Casso and stripped him of rank, Gaspipe made a dramatic decision. He agreed to cooperate with the government. In March 1994, just weeks before his federal trial was set to begin, Casso reached a plea deal with prosecutors, pleading guilty to 14 murders and numerous other felonies in exchange for a chance at leniency. Casso became one of the highest-ranking New York mafioso ever to flip at that time. Initially, Casso's debriefings was a prosecutor's dream. He confessed to 37 murders in total, either committed by him or ordered by him, a body count that almost defies imagination. In these proffers, Casso spilled secrets about the inner workings of the Mafia. Importantly, he outed detectives Ippolito and Caracappa as his partners in crime, fully corroborating what had been rumors about mob cops on a gangland payroll. He detailed how the duo had been involved in hits and had sold him information for years. However, to the FBI and prosecutors, Casso was still a problematic witness. They were pleased to have coerced his plea. Indeed, the federal team admitted relief that they didn't have to try Casso in court, given the paucity of wiretap evidence and the risk of a hung jury. But when it came to using Casso as a cooperating witness, agents were wary. Their caution proved justified. Gaspipe Casso ultimately sabotaged his own deal. While in custody, Casso violated the rules of the Witness Protection Program repeatedly. He was caught bribing guards for special privileges and using the prison phones improperly. He was also caught in lies. He minimized certain crimes and made claims the feds couldn't verify. Notably, Casso insisted he had an informant on the inside of the FBI in addition to the two NYPD detectives. He also floated plots that he had purportedly been asked to do by rogue agents, further muddling the waters. In sum, prosecutors concluded Casso was uncontrollable and unreliable. In 1997, the U.S. Attorney's Office took the unprecedented step of dropping Casso from the Federal Witness Protection Program and voiding the cooperation agreement due to his misconduct and dishonesty. As one court later summarized, Casso had been a violent prisoner and had lied about several matters, rendering him unusable as a witness. This betrayal by the government in Casso's eyes and by Casso in the government's eyes sealed his fate. In 1998, Gaspipe Casso was sentenced to 455 years in prison, effectively life without parole, for an extraordinary litany of crimes, including multiple murders, racketeering, extortion, bribery, and tax evasion. The judge castigated Casso for his staggering depravity. With his plea deal nullified, Casso earned no benefit from his cooperation. He was shipped off to the federal supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, ADX Florence, to live out his days in extreme isolation. Even behind bars, Anthony Casso remained a volatile figure. Initially held at ADX Florence, a reflection of his deemed danger, Casso reportedly had clashes with staff and other inmates. He allegedly plotted unsuccessfully to murder a federal prison guard he disliked, further justifying his solitary confinement. His health deteriorated over the years as he suffered from coronary artery disease, diabetes, and other ailments. Casso was later transferred to several facilities, including medium-security prisons and medical centers, as his condition worsened. In the end, it was the COVID-19 pandemic that brought Gaspipe's life to a close. In early November 2020, at the age of 78, Casso contracted the coronavirus while imprisoned at USP Tucson in Arizona. Already suffering from a myriad of pre-existing conditions, he quickly took a turn for the worse. He is placed on a ventilator in intensive care. Casso's attorneys made a last-ditch motion for compassionate release given his terminal condition, but a judge denied it in late November. On December 15, 2020, Anthony Gaspipe Casso died from complications of COVID-19 in federal custody. The Bureau of Prisons noted in its press release that Casso had been serving a life sentence for racketeering, murder, and other offenses, and confirmed he was pronounced dead by hospital staff that day. So ended the life of one of organized crime's most savage leaders, not in a hell of bullets or dramatic betrayal, but alone in a hospital bed, under guard, brought down by a virus. Anthony Casso's story is as much a case study in criminal psychology as it is an underworld biography. By all accounts, Casso's personality traits, his paranoia, capacity for extreme brutality, volatility of temper, and street cunning defined his approach to power and ultimately led to his downfall. Casso was obsessively distrustful to a degree that even other gangsters found excessive. He saw potential informants behind every setback. This paranoia drove him to murder loyal men purely on suspicion. It led him to target family members of defectors, breaking unspoken mob norms out of fear of what a single snitch might do. His paranoid purges of the Jersey Crew and others generated so much internal dissent that it spurred an unprecedented wave of cooperation against him. In effect, Casso's paranoia became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Terrified of informants, he created informants at an alarming rate, as surviving Lucchese members raced to the FBI to save themselves from Gaspipe. Even in prison, Casso remained paranoid, accusing the FBI of hiding a mole in its ranks and never fully accepting responsibility for the collapse of his. This trait, while it kept him hypervigilant, proved ruinous in a leadership role that requires some level of trust and stability. Casso had no hesitation about using extraordinary violence as a tool. His reputation for brutality was unparalleled. Even hardened mobsters feared him. As one FBI agent put it, Gaspipe loved murder. He was known to personally participate in gruesome killings when most higher-ups would have delegated. His ways of killing were often over-the-top, car bombings that could have incinerated bystanders, point-blank executions, torturing a victim for information before finishing them off, as he did with Jimmy Heidel. The canary in the mouth scene with Bruno Facciolo's corpse stands as a grotesque signature of Gaspipe's reign. He was willing to kill anyone, rivals, friends, innocent bystanders, law officers, women. No one was off limits if they crossed him. This ultra-violence certainly brought short-term obedience, but it also created lasting infamy. Many who dealt with Casso remarked on his hair-trigger temper. He could be genial one moment and murderous the next. This volatility meant his subordinates walked on eggshells. An offhand remark or a minor mistake could be interpreted by Gaspipe as betrayal. For instance, Al D'Arco's defection was precipitated by Casso berating him and acting erratically at a 1991 meeting. D'Arco sensed the diminutive thug might kill him on a whim and fled. Casso's lack of emotional restraint, a propensity for rage, likely fueled episodes like the impulsive decision to try to whack an entire New Jersey crew. At times, his rage overrode rationality as when he insisted on revenge against families of informants, a tactic that brought more heat from the FBI and disgust from other mobsters. It's telling that even Casso's longtime boss, Vicamuso, came to suspect him. The volatile atmosphere between them bred distrust on both sides. In leadership, Casso's volatility meant there was little consistency or predictability, undermining loyalty beyond raw fear. On the other hand, Gaspipe was undeniably cunning and shrewd with a predatory intelligence. He was an innovator in crime. Suborning NYPD detectives was an unprecedented coup that gave him a major edge over rival mobsters and law enforcement. He demonstrated strategic thinking in business by forging alliances, like with the Russians and other families, to maximize profit. He also proved to be a skilled escape artist while on the run, using code and cutouts to evade detection for 2.5 years. At times, his cunning manifested in surprisingly meticulous ways, as seen in the confiscated ledgers of family finances, which read almost like a corporate treasurer's book. This shows a calculating mind capable of organizing complex thought, and yet this same calculating mind made him think he could manipulate the federal government. Initially, Casso navigated the informant waters to his advantage by giving just enough to get a deal while holding back some secrets, perhaps hoping to use them as leverage. But he overplayed his hand, thinking he could outsmart veteran prosecutors, a rare instance when his cunning failed him, leading to his undoing when they caught his lies. In sum, Gaspipe Casso was an extraordinary mix of criminal talents and fatal flaws. His street cunning and ferocity took him to the pinnacle of the Mafia, but his paranoia, cruelty, and impulsiveness ultimately destroyed his empire and condemned him to a terrible end. Casso could not temper his bloodlust for the sake of the organization. As Lucchese turncoat Al D'Arco succinctly said of the Gaspipe era, many of us lost sight of what Cosa Nostra was supposed to be about. It became all about greed and murder with Vic and Gaspipe. Anthony Gaspipe Casso's legacy in organized crime is one of infamy and caution. In the annals of the American Mafia, Casso is remembered as one of the most violent and feared mob leaders of the late 20th century. His name became synonymous with relentless brutality. Even Cosa Nostra insiders spoke of him with a mix of awe and revulsion. Government witness Sammy Gravano, who crossed paths with Casso and Rackets, reportedly feared Casso more than Gotti due to Gaspipe's willingness to murder innocents to get at a target. Such was the terror he inspired. Under Casso's brief rule as underboss, the Lucchese family was both rich and chaotic. Economically, Casso helped the family capitalize on new rackets and likely kept it flush with cash even as the commission case was decapitating other families. But the mayhem he unleashed severely weakened the Luccheses in the long run. By the mid-1990s, virtually the entire Lucchese leadership was imprisoned and multiple crews had flipped. The family's influence receded for years as it dealt with the fallout. To this day, Vicamuso, who's still officially the boss, serving life in prison, trusts almost no one, a legacy of the deep mistrust sown during the Casso years. It took over a decade for the Lucchese family to stabilize after the federal onslaught, that Gaspipe's rampage invited. On a broader level, Casso's case has significant repercussions for law enforcement and the Mafia at large. His revelations about the Mafia cops were initially dismissed due to his tainted credibility, but ultimately more evidence vindicated him. In 2005, when Burton Kaplan turned witness, prosecutors resurrected the case, and Ippolito and Caracappa were convicted in 2006 of the murders and racketeering Casso had described. Thus, Gaspipe's information, albeit delayed, helped expose one of the worst police corruption scandals in NYPD history, leading to a long overdue justice. Additionally, the Casso saga prompted law enforcement to tighten controls on cooperating witnesses in custody, and his expulsion from witness protection was a black eye the DOJ didn't want repeated. Culturally, Gaspipe Casso stands as a symbol of the Mafia's internal destruction in the 80s and 90s. The commission case, the Mafia War with Gotti, the rise of the kingpins who broke the old rules, Casso was the center of it all in New York. His decision to turn informant, only to blow the deal, is often cited in mob histories as a tale of arrogance and wasted opportunity. Unlike Gravano or other turncoats who leveraged their cooperation to freedom, Casso managed the rare feat of making both the Mafia and the FBI hate him. As Jerry Capisi quipped, Gaspipe had the loyalty of a snake, and he was treated accordingly in the end. Within organized crime, Casso's downfall served as a lesson. His excessive cruelty violated the Mafia's code and spirit and undermined its integrity, demonstrating that indiscriminate violence can be as dangerous to a crime family as law enforcement itself. In conclusion, Anthony Gaspipe Casso's life was a study in extremes. He was financially savvy yet recklessly bloodthirsty, deeply steeped in old-school Mafia tradition, yet responsible for shattering many of its norms. His tenure as underboss saw dizzying heights of power and profit, followed by an almost Shakespearean collapse. Few mobsters have managed to inflict as much damage on friend and foe alike as Gaspipe did. Ultimately, Casso's impact on organized crime was to hasten the erosion of the very secret society he once dominated. His name will forever be associated with the lethal chaos that marked the end of the Mafia's golden age and the rise of a far more unstable era in the underworld. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you thought in the comments below about the Gaspipe Casso video. I'm curious to know your thoughts on his legacy, and if you agree with me that the damage he did to the Lucchese family hasn't been repaired more than 30 years later. If you like the content, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and God bless you always.